I'm sitting here in Nathan's kitchen. Well, I guess it's our kitchen now. Though I still can't quite. I mean, I still think of it as his. The coffee's gone cold in front of me, and I've got this piece of paper in my hands. The contract, you know. I keep it folded in my apron pocket, right against my hip where I can feel it all day long. I remember the day I signed this thing like some women remember their wedding day, which is, honestly, kind of funny. Because this was my wedding day, just a different kind. It was 6 months ago, February. Nathan Cross's parlor was so formal, so careful. 2 chairs set across from each other, not close. You understand. Respectful distance. His late wife's sewing basket was still by the window. And I noticed her wedding ring sitting on the shelf behind him. Like he'd taken it off but couldn't quite put it away. That told me everything I needed to know. He was protecting himself. Same as me. He laid out the terms in this quiet, professional voice. 1 year, I'd manage the household, provide companionship for social obligations, patients trust a married doctor more. He said, in exchange, I'd receive respectable employment, housing, and dignity. I suppose. Freedom. Clause 7? I said, tapping the paper. Early termination with 2 weeks' notice. No explanation required. He looked at me, then really looked at me. I believe in exit strategies. Mrs. Hayes, you should too. I should tell you why I needed that clause so badly. Why the idea of it made me feel like I could breathe again. My first husband. Look. He said permanence. Said forever. Said trust me. And I learned God. I learned the hard way that words are just weather. They change. People leave. Or they stay but become strangers. Or they make you wish they'd left. So when Nathan Cross offered me a contract with an end date, with terms written down in ink, with a guaranteed escape route, it felt like the first honest thing a man had ever offered me. I signed. He slid the first month's payment across the table. Businesslike. Perfect. I felt safe for the first time in 3 years. Now I'm sitting here, 6 months later, touching this same piece of paper. And it feels different. It used to feel like armor, like protection. Now it feels like I don't know. A cage. Maybe. Or a lie I'm telling myself. I told myself I kept it in my pocket for reference. You know, in case I needed to check the terms or something. But that's not true. I kept it close because it was the only thing standing between me and the truth I didn't want to face. That first week was, well, it was strange. I moved in with a single trunk. Nathan showed me to the spare bedroom at the end of the hall, the far end, which I appreciated. I unpacked methodically, kept everything practical. No photographs, no sentimental things. Just what I needed to do the job I'd been hired for. The first morning. I woke up at 5, made coffee, set the table. When Nathan came into the kitchen at 6:15, we did this awkward dance around each other like strangers at a train depot. You know, Careful not to touch. Careful not to look too long. I made rules for myself immediately. Never linger at breakfast. Keep my hands busy. Conversations stay practical, his patient schedule. The weather. What supplies we needed from town. Eye contact minimal. Smile polite. Never warm. Nathan. He followed my lead. Polite. Appreciative. Utterly impersonal. It was perfect. I spent that first day working through the house. And honestly, it felt good. The previous housekeeper had been slovenly medical supplies, dusty and disordered. Linens wrinkled. The kitchen. Lord. The kitchen was a disaster. I reorganized everything. Alphabetized his medical supplies. Scrubbed the floors. Mended the curtains. Control felt good. That evening, Nathan came home late. Really late. He'd been at a difficult birth for, I think he said 14 hours. He thanked me for keeping his supper warm. And when he lifted his fork, I noticed. His hands were shaking. Just this slight tremor from exhaustion. His fingers could barely grip the fork properly. I noticed. I told myself I only noticed because it was relevant to household scheduling if he was going to be called out for long emergencies. I needed to plan meals differently. That's all it was. Practical observation. But that night, lying in my bed at the far end of the hall, I could hear his footsteps, the house settling, the creak of his bedroom door closing. I pulled the contract out from under my pillow and read it again by moonlight. Every clause, every term, like a prayer. This will work, I told myself, because we both want it to mean nothing. My hands were already getting rough from the work. Lye soap and scrubbing and kneading bread. I was proud of that. Rough hands don't reach for things they shouldn't want. The next few weeks, they fell into this rhythm, this pattern. Coffee at 6, his footsteps at 6:15. Breakfast conversation, always the same safe topics. The weather, his patients, town news. Nothing personal. Nothing that would crack the careful distance we'd built. He'd leave for his rounds. I'd work. Supper at 7. We'd eat together. Talk about surface things. Then retire to separate corners of the house. It was working exactly as designed. I took inventory of my improvements constantly, kept a mental ledger. The medical supplies were alphabetized and properly stocked now. The pantry organized. Curtains mended. That loose porch step repaired. The garden weeded. Value given equals value received. Fair exchange. One evening in late March, Nathan mentioned a patient the Sanders family. Poor folk. Couldn't pay. Mrs. Sanders was expecting. And it was going to be a difficult birth. Should I take it? He asked. Looking up from his medical journal, I stopped mid-stitch. He was asking my opinion if you only treated people who could pay. I said slowly, you wouldn't be the doctor you are. He looked at me then, really looked. That's exactly right. Elizabeth. It was the first time he'd used my given name outside of formal necessity. A week later, Mrs. Sanders came by to thank me. Doc Cross talks about you like a partner. she said, smiling. Not help, I deflected. Said I just managed the household, but the word stayed with me. Partner. That night at supper, Nathan told me about the Sanders birth. We delivered a healthy boy, he said. 9 pounds. Strong lungs. I heard it, tried to mentally correct it to he, but the word had it had claws. You know, it dug in. Spring was coming, everything dripping and melting, the whole world turning to mud. I hated it preferred winter's clean boundaries. Thaw felt messy, dangerous. I started noticing things I didn't want to notice. The way Nathan rubbed his left eye when he was tired. How he was gentle with frightened children, but firm with their anxious mothers. The books on his shelf. Emerson. Whitman. Poetry. I wouldn't have expected that from a frontier doctor. I told myself it was natural. Anyone who lived in someone's house would notice these things. It meant nothing. But late at night, I knew the truth. I wasn't tracking his schedule anymore. I was tracking him. By April, I was noticing everything, and I hated myself for it. The way Nathan took his coffee black, but his tea with honey. How he always read with his left hand supporting his head. The small scar on his right hand, from what I assumed was a scalpel slip. His handwriting precise. Controlled. Except when he was tired. Then it got loose and sprawling. These observations felt like betrayals of the contract. There were these moments of, domestic intimacy. I guess you'd call it unplanned. I'd bring him coffee while he worked late, and he'd look up surprised, grateful. He steadied my elbow once when I slipped on the wet porch steps. We never acknowledged these moments, but I felt them accumulating, like debt, like something owed that I couldn't repay. I started having these internal arguments with myself. I'm observant by nature. I'd notice anyone's habits. It doesn't mean anything. 16 weeks left? Just 16 more weeks. I was counting down now. Should have been counting down to freedom. But it didn't feel like that. Then there was the night everything shifted. Nathan came home late from a birth that had gone wrong. He'd lost the mother, young woman. 3 children left behind. When I found him in his study, he was just sitting there, staring at nothing. I brought him brandy, sat down in the chair across from him, not beside him. That would have been too intimate. I didn't say anything, didn't try to comfort him or tell him it wasn't his fault, or any of those useless things people say. I just sat. An hour passed. Maybe more. Finally, he spoke. Thank you for not trying to fix it. I understood what he meant. Sometimes the gift is just bearing witness. Being present for the grief without trying to erase it. But later, lying in my bed, I realized that was real intimacy. Not contractual duty, not household management, real connection. And I was terrified. I gripped my bedpost and whispered the contract terms out loud, like an incantation against what I was feeling. No emotional obligations, 12-month term, early termination clause. My hands shook when I poured his coffee the next morning. Just a slight tremor. I gripped the pot tighter. Forced them steady. But I knew the armor was cracking. Late April brought 3 days of rain. Relentless. The kind that makes you feel like the sky's been split open and will never close again. The creek flooded. The road to town became impassable. Patients couldn't reach Nathan. We couldn't reach town. We were trapped together. The first day was awkward. I cooked these elaborate meals just to keep my hands busy. Bread and stew and pie and things we didn't need. Nathan read. We orbited each other carefully in that small house. Like planets that couldn't risk collision. But the house felt smaller somehow. The second night, we ran out of safe topics. We'd exhausted the weather, obviously terrible. The patients, none could come. The town news, we had no new news. Silence loomed between us like a living thing. Nathan asked about my past. Gentle, careful, giving me escape routes with every question. I told him, well, partial truth. I'd been married before, learned not to trust permanence. People make promises they can't keep or won't keep. Learned to protect myself. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, my first wife, Caroline. People assume I'm grief-stricken, that I loved her so much I can't bear. But that's not true. I looked up. We were compatible, he said slowly. Polite, dutiful, but I'm not sure we understood each other. I thank God. I think we were both lonely in that marriage. Is that a terrible thing to say about someone who's dead? It's an honest thing, I said. The fire burned low. Rain hammered the windows. We sat in this companionable silence. Not awkward anymore. Just, he looked at me. Different. Like he was seeing something new. I felt it too. This pull. This dangerous pull toward honesty. Toward truth. I stood up abruptly. It's late. Good night. In my room. I lay awake, listening to the rain. Started counting. 16 weeks, 112 days, 2,688 hours. But I wasn't counting down to freedom anymore. I was counting down to loss. The morning after the floods receded, we tried to return to our careful routine, but something had shifted, irreversibly. The house felt smaller. Every accidental touch carried this electricity. I used to count down to my escape. Now I was counting down to my ending. The contract hadn't changed. May came, and I watched myself fall in love the way you'd watch an accident happen in slow motion. Clinical, horrified, unable to stop it. I cataloged the symptoms like I was diagnosing a disease. Pulse quickening when I heard his key in the lock. Wanting his opinion on things that didn't matter. Saving up stories to tell him at supper. Noticing when he looked tired and wanting to fix it. I tried to fight it. Rebuilt my walls. Spoke less at supper. Took long walks alone. Kept my hands even busier if that was possible. Nathan noticed. Gave me space. And that made it worse. You know, his respect for my boundaries just made me love him more. The fact that he didn't push, Then there was the social at Dr. Patterson's house. We had to attend. As a married couple, I dressed carefully, played my role perfectly. The gracious doctor's wife smiled at the right moments, said the right things. Then I saw her, Mrs. Wilson, young widow, pretty. She touched Nathan's arm while they talked, laughed too warmly at something he said, leaned in too close. I felt this spike of jealousy shoot straight through my chest, and then I realized I had no right. He wasn't mine. The contract explicitly stated no emotional obligations. He could do whatever he wanted. Walking home. Nathan asked, "Are you all right?" "Yes," I said. "Fine." "Why?" He stopped walking, looked at me in the moonlight. "You can tell me the truth. Elizabeth, whatever it is." I almost broke. Almost told him everything right there. Then I said, "Just tired." The lie tasted like betrayal, like ash in my mouth. That night, I realized the truth. I was violating the contract's spirit. No emotional obligations. But love is the worst obligation. It binds you without permission, without escape. I had two choices: stay and lie, or leave and be honest. The contract gave me Clause 7, the escape clause. I never thought I'd have to use it to save him from me. I woke up one morning in early June and realized 6 months. 6 months exactly. Halfway through, I should have felt, I don't know, accomplishment, relief instead. I felt like I was counting down to an execution. Here's the thing about loving someone you have no right to love: you can't stay. Not honestly. I couldn't keep living in his house, sleeping down the hall, pouring his coffee every morning, pretending this was just a business arrangement. But I couldn't confess either. He didn't sign up for that burden, didn't ask for my feelings. The contract was clear: no emotional obligations. I was trapped. I started watching him for signs. Any indication that he felt it too. Found nothing. He was warmer than in February. Sure. Comfortable. Like he'd found a pleasant arrangement that suited him. I'd invented this entire crisis alone. One sleepless night. I made the decision. Clause 7, early termination. No explanation required. It was the only honest choice. I'd wait until he was called to a distant patient. Pack quickly. Leave a note invoking the clause. Be gone before he returned. Clean break. Like the contract promised. I started cataloging what was mine, which was almost nothing. A few dresses, some books, the hairpins my mother gave me. Everything that mattered belonged to him. I built the wall back up, brick by brick, became colder, more distant, professional. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was necessary. The contract was supposed to set me free. Instead, it was teaching me the cruelest lesson: freedom means nothing if you're leaving the only place you want to be. It was a Tuesday, mid-June. Nathan got called to the Morrison farm early complicated birth. He'd be gone until evening at least. I pulled out my trunk. Now or never. I started packing, folding my dresses carefully. like I had all the time in the world. When really, my heart was hammering so hard, I thought it might crack my ribs. Each item triggered a memory. This shawl, Nathan said, it brought out my eyes. This dress, the social, where I felt that spike of jealousy. This apron worn every morning, making his coffee. Learning how he liked it. Which mug he preferred. My hands were shaking. No, wait. They were wet. I was crying. When had I started crying? The dry hands had finally failed me. Everything was failing. Then I heard it. The door. His voice. Elizabeth. He was home early. I froze, surrounded by my half-packed trunk. Clothes scattered across the bed. Nowhere to hide. No lie prepared. He appeared in the doorway, saw the trunk, saw my face. "You're leaving," confusion in his voice, then hurt. "Did something happen? Did I do something?" "No." My voice cracked. "No. Nathan, you didn't." Then why I thought we had an understanding. I thought, I have to go. I couldn't look at him. "I'm breaking the contract terms." "What terms?" He stepped into the room. "Elizabeth, you've been perfect." "What are you talking about?" I forced myself to look at him. To be honest, for once, I fell in love with you. I whispered. That wasn't part of our agreement. The silence was horrible, stretching. Nathan's face went completely still. I waited for pity, or dismissal, or that awkward kindness people use when they're trying to let you down gently. Instead, he set down his medical bag, removed his coat. Carefully, slowly. Then he walked to my trunk and started helping me pack. I couldn't breathe. He was being professional about this, making it easy for me, folding my shawl with gentle hands, placing it carefully in the trunk. This was worse than anything I'd imagined. I could barely see through my tears as he folded another dress, added it to the trunk. Moving with that same careful efficiency he brought to everything. Then he picked up the entire trunk, carried it toward the door. I followed, numb, as he walked through the house, out the front door, past the wagon, straight to the fire pit behind the house, and threw the trunk into it. "What are you doing?" I cried out. "My things." Nathan pulled something from his pocket. The contract. Our contract. He added it to the fire. "You're right," he said quietly, watching the paper catch. "You broke the terms." My heart shattered. So did I. Elizabeth, I love you too. This contract is void. I couldn't process what he was saying. "But we agreed." I started. "We agreed to pretend we could live together without feeling." He turned to face me. "We were fools. I love you, not as an employee or a convenience or a household arrangement. As my wife, real marriage, not a business contract. If..." His voice caught. If you'll have me. The contract gave me the freedom to leave, I said softly. He nodded, looked down, waiting for me to walk away. I took a breath. Loving you gives me the freedom to stay. His eyes snapped up to mine. We stood there in the smoke of our burned contract. Ash floating between us like snow. And for the first time in 6 months, I let him see me cry. No safety net, no exit clause, just two people choosing the terrifying freedom of truth. We didn't rush inside, didn't fall into each other's arms like some romantic story. We sat on the porch steps and watched the contract burn down to ash. Just processing. I thought you were content, Nathan said finally. With the arrangement, you seemed, I don't know, comfortable. I was protecting myself, I said. Same as you. When did you know? He asked. The flood, when we talked about real things, but I think I'd been falling for a while before I admitted it. March, he said. When you told me to take the Sanders case, that's when I knew. March. I stared at him. You've been since March. Terrified since March. He corrected. You had Clause 7, the freedom to leave. I didn't want to trap you with my feelings. Didn't want you to stay out of, I don't know, pity or obligation. The irony of it, both of us silent, both protecting the other, both miserable. So, what do we do now? I asked. We start over. No contract. No terms. Just, he took my hand. Truth, if you'll risk it. That night, I stayed in my own room. Too much. Too fast. We both needed time. But I left the door open and down the hall. I heard him leave his door open too, the next morning. I made coffee with hands that shook for entirely different reasons. Not fear. Anticipation. Nathan came into the kitchen, and when I tried to pour, my hands trembled so badly I nearly spilled. He caught the cup, steadied it. Your hands are shaking. I laughed, actually laughed, surprised by the sound. I know. I can't seem to stop them. Good. He smiled. They should shake. This matters. Word spread through town, small places being what they are. Someone had seen the trunk burning. Mrs. Sanders stopped by to congratulate us. Heard you and Doc really married now. She said, grinning. I expected to feel embarrassed. Instead, I felt proud. I'd chosen this. No one forced me. No one rescued me. I chose. That afternoon, Nathan and I made bread together, him beside me. Our hands working the dough, flour everywhere, messy, imperfect. I realized my dry hands were never strong. They were just afraid to touch anything that mattered. Now our hands worked together, flour dusted, uncertain, real. I'm writing this at dawn. Nathan's still sleeping in our bed. Our bed now. Not his. I can hear him breathing. Steady. Real. I'm thinking about freedom. I used to think it meant having an escape route. A guaranteed way out. Protection against hurt. But real freedom, it's different. It's choosing to stay when you could leave. It's waking up every morning and deciding yes. Today, I choose this. I choose him. I choose us. I choose the terrifying beauty of having no safety net. The contract promised me 1 year. Love promises me nothing but today. And today, I choose him. Tomorrow, I expect I'll choose him again. That's the thing about freedom, real freedom. It means you get to keep choosing. And I choose love. Every morning, every day, even knowing it could break me. Especially knowing that. Because that's what it means to be free. The end. The